our first duo of the podcast. Mike.
Dynamic duo.
Yes. Eric, good to have you both here. So first question, everyone's getting this question. And Eric, we'll start with you, and then Michael, I want your perceptions on this too, is how do you define smart manufacturing personally? Then maybe more importantly, how do you define the smart manufacturing mindset?
Oh, cool. That's a great question. So first of all, smart manufacturing has been around for a while. So I think what's new now is that people start thinking in terms of platforms, in terms of interoperability of different assets, different systems on the shop floor, also in the cloud, also interoperating maybe with some of the competitive solutions that are out there and how a customer can integrate those. And in terms of the mindset, it's really thinking differently about what's important to you. What value do you want to take out of a smart manufacturing platform? Is it around, squeezing that last 5% out of your efficiency? Or is it more around, thinking in terms of ecosystems and data models, and also, really, it's no longer about the protocol, but about the data model. The data models that you're using, the information models of your assets, no matter what they are, machines, systems, ERP systems, whatever they may be, and making sure that the data models are an open ecosystem data model.
So smart manufacturing's been around for a while, but what I heard you say is there's a shift to focusing on platforms, data, interoperability. We'll get into all these further. Mike, I want to get your answer to this same question as well. What is smart manufacturing and how do you define the mindset?
I'm happy to look at it from a little bit of a different perspective. Personally, I come from the process automation realm. So I've got 33 years in process automation. My take on it is very similar to what Eric's pointed out, but the mantra that we've been going through for the last few decades is trying to avoid vendor lock-in. And smart manufacturing is just another way of saying I'd like to embrace the open architectures that are out there. From my personal viewpoint, we've done a lot to try to avoid vendor lock-in by embracing open standards, by even participating. My personal background is I've helped write part of the open process automation standard. Mm-hmm. So staying involved in that and being a contributor to that is just furthering that ideal.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I appreciate the different perspectives on this. Next thing I want to ask is around the OPC Foundation, to get some baseline here. It's Manufacturing Happy Hour. Mike, maybe you could take this one. When someone asks you what the OPC Foundation is, how do you describe it to them as if you're having a cocktail with someone? Let's say at the trade show Happy Hour, for example.
I've had some fun with this, and more recently, one of the things that popped into a conversation, and this was just some boys talking over the fence to each other. We were talking about how the OPC Foundation is the interoperability standard, and I got a blank stare from someone on that, and I said, well, have you ever played with Lego bricks? And they're like, well, of course. I said, so go back to the original Lego brick. It was a very simple, very rudimentary kit. And then somebody came along and said, well, let's make it Lego Star Wars. Oh no, let's make it Harry Potter, or let's make it Lego Farm.
Yeah.
OPC is Lego. All of these other pieces are the companion specs that help further the OPC technology. So you've got a spec for robotics and a spec for injection molding. You've got a spec for wind and solar, right? These are all adjuncts to the base specification. So I don't like to throw Lego under the bus, but it's a good analogy. It's a way of saying, OPC is the interoperability standard.
Yeah.
Everything else just plugs into it.
Why are standards so important right now?
If you don't have a standard, you're at the behest of whatever your programmer is going to create. I've worked in fields where you've got a battery over here and a battery over here. This is upstream gas, for example, okay? And you've got a programmer here and a programmer here. And now you're going to start to bring that stuff back to aggregate it at some sort of a enterprise server, okay? The way it was programmed here and the way it was programmed here, they may seem to be the same until you start to get into the guts of it. And then all of a sudden you realize they aren't the same. There are some nuances, there are some differences, and you're at the behest of each of these programmers and their flair for programming. It's remarkable to see what happens when you've got that collision of disparate data and the work that has to now be done to do data cleansing if you wanted to do any analytics on that.
Well, maybe this is a good segue to a question I have for you, Erich, around, these might be two different questions, but interoperability and how OPC Foundation is working with CESMII on a more global platform.
Right, so CESMII approached us maybe 6-7 years ago, something like that, and they said they wanted to build this new smart manufacturing platform that is now actually available here on the show. And we said, of course we will help, and specifically they wanted to know how they could make the platform as open as possible, and again, to my data model point, using open standard data models. So we started, we're looking at the requirements, what they wanted to build really, and it became clear that we needed a central database or library of these companion specifications and these open data models that they could use in our platform. So we created the UA Cloud Library, which actually triggered off a whole suite of cloud applications and edge applications that are now open source, available on GitHub. And the Cloud Library was the first one. And we integrated the Cloud Library with CESMII into their Smart Manufacturing Innovation Platform, and it's their central database, their central library of all these information models, all these data models that you can use to model your machinery on the shop floor, to bring it all into a consistent ecosystem. So that was the start, but since then we've been working on several different projects with CESMII, and it's a really close relationship.
Well, one area, and this is the last question I've got that I wanted to dig into, was sustainability. It's come up a couple times in our interviews so far, but we haven't taken as deep of a dive into it as we could. Erich, maybe you can answer this. How are we focused on sustainable manufacturing in this smart manufacturing ecosystem, if you will?
Yeah, that's a real good question. I mean, it's unavoidable these days to look at sustainability as a manufacturer and to see if you can possibly make your production system more environmentally friendly. Mm-hmm. So to do that, you need to collect a bunch of data that a lot of folks haven't really started collecting yet. And OPC UA is a really great way to get that data out of the machine in a standardized format and then make it part of your product carbon footprint calculation, for example. So we've worked with CESMII to integrate OPC UA data into a demonstrator that allows us to then generate product carbon footprint information of the machine or manufactured products that a manufacturer sells, because very soon everybody will have to either by legislation or because of customer pressure to start reporting these sustainability information regarding products. And really the only way to do that is to first collect the data in the standardized format, otherwise you're going to go crazy trying to collect it all. So really it's the groundwork for more sustainable manufacturing.
So I'm thinking back to all the questions, all the discussion we've had here in this short time, sustainability, importance of standards. What is one thing that manufacturers are missing today, whether it's specific to OPC or whether it's more related to smart manufacturing? What's something that manufacturers are missing today that they need to be thinking of? Mike, if you want to lead this one off, and then Erich, if you want to close us out, that'd be excellent.
I think the key is education. That's the one thing they're missing. You see the workforce and the skill level that's in that workforce. Smart manufacturing is dragging us into the 21st century kicking and screaming in some cases. And you'll see people that are looking at yesteryear's model. They're looking at the way they've behaved for the last 20 years. I'm sorry, you're going to have to do a little more to educate yourself to embrace some of the new techniques, some of the new capabilities of these systems. And that's going to take some time. That's going to take some effort on each individual to make the time to learn, to be able to ingest this new technology into your brain so that when you're asked to participate in these things, you don't look at it from a perspective of ignorance.
Yeah. Erich, what would your answer be?
Yeah, I would, +1 on that. I mean, I really think that people want to do the right thing, but they're just missing the basic information to get them there, right? And I mean, the work that CESMII does is fundamental. So, really listen to CESMII and what they're talking about with smart manufacturing mindset, changing the way they've always done things, using these open interfaces that the OPC Foundation and CESMII are pushing. The Department of Energy is doing great work there, also with the Manufacturing USA initiative that obviously CESMII is part of. So those are the kind of pioneers, right? And now it's our job to make it mainstream. And really, it's all about getting the right information into people's hands. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you both coming on to share your perspectives and educating us on the smart manufacturing mindset. Erich, Mike, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.